Your 2026 destiny is calling, and it's rooted in nature. Right now, in this moment, your unconscious mind already knows the path you need to walk next year. We're about to reveal a unique journey to self-actualization, where choosing a tree becomes a powerful mirror to your soul. This isn't prediction. This is recognition. Don't miss out on uncovering the specific psychological journey that will transform your personal evolution. The tree you choose in the next 60 seconds will reveal everything. As 2025 wraps up, are you feeling it? That restlessness? That sense that something needs to change? That whisper in your soul saying, this can't be all there is? You're not alone. Right now, millions of people are standing at the threshold of 2026, wondering what it will bring. But here's what most people don't understand. 2026 isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create. And the path you walk, the growth you experience, the person you become, it's all already encoded in your psyche, waiting, ready to emerge. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying what he called the process of individuation, the journey of becoming your true self. Not the self that society wants you to be, not the self your parents programmed you to be, not the self your wounds convinced you to be, but your actual self, the person you came here to be. And he discovered something profound. This journey isn't random. It follows archetypal patterns, universal blueprints that exist in every human psyche. And these patterns, these archetypes, they speak through symbols, through images, through nature. Today, we're using one of the oldest symbols in human history, the tree. Since the beginning of consciousness, humans have seen themselves reflected in trees. We talk about family trees. We talk about putting down roots. We talk about branching out. We talk about being grounded. These aren't just metaphors. These are psychological truths. Because trees, like humans, grow, transform, face storms, lose leaves, regenerate. And the tree that calls to you, the one that makes something in your chest recognize itself, that's showing you your path, your archetypal pattern, your 2026 blueprint for self-actualization. But before we begin, you need to understand what self-actualization actually means. Most people think it's about success, achievement, becoming the best version of yourself. But that's not what Jung meant. That's not what Maslow meant. Self-actualization isn't about becoming better than you are. It's about becoming who you already are. It's about stripping away everything that isn't you until only the truth remains. It's about healing the split between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. And that process, that journey, it's different for everyone because we're all growing toward different versions of wholeness. So here's what's about to happen. I'm going to show you 3 trees, not random trees, 3 archetypal trees that represent 3 completely different paths of psychological growth, 3 different journeys towards self-actualization, 3 different destinies waiting for you in 2026. And the tree you choose, the one that creates a resonance in your body, that's your unconscious telling you which path you're meant to walk. Don't think about this logically. Don't pick the tree you think sounds best. Don't pick the tree that looks prettiest. Pick the tree that feels like home, like recognition, like a truth you've been avoiding. Your body knows before your mind does. Your soul has already chosen. You just need to listen. In a moment, you'll see 3 trees, the ancient oak, the weeping willow, and the lone pine. Look at them carefully. Feel which one pulls at something deep inside you, which one makes you feel something, even if you can't name what that feeling is. Pause the video if you need to, because this choice matters. This choice is about to reveal the path your psyche is ready to walk in 2026. Ready? Here are your 3 trees. The ancient oak, strong, grounded, enduring. The weeping willow, graceful, flexible, flowing. The lone pine, solitary, ascending, reaching upward. Which one are you? Which one feels like your truth? Take your time. Let your unconscious choose. Have you decided? Can you feel which tree is calling you? Good. Now let's unlock what your soul has been trying to tell you about your 2026 journey. The ancient oak, the path of rooted power. If you chose the ancient oak, your 2026 path is the rooted warrior, the grounded leader, the one who must learn to stand in their power without apology. And listen, this isn't about becoming aggressive or dominant. This is about finally, after years of making yourself small, allowing yourself to take up space, to be big, to be solid, to be unmovable when the storms come, because they're coming. And you're going to need roots deeper than you've ever grown before. Here's what your unconscious is telling you by choosing the oak. You're done shrinking. You're done accommodating. You're done bending yourself into shapes that fit other people's comfort. Something in you has decided that 2026 is the year you stop asking for permission to exist. Stop apologizing for taking up room. Stop diminishing your strength so others don't feel threatened. The oak doesn't apologize for its size. It doesn't make itself smaller, so other trees can have more sunlight. It grows, fully, unapologetically. That's your path. The ancient oak represents what Jung called the self-archetype in its most stable form. It's the center, the axis mundi, the world tree that connects heaven and earth. And you, oak, you've been chosen to become that for yourself and for others. Not because you want to, but because it's time. Because you spent enough years being unsure, being uncertain, being moved by every wind that blows. And 2026 is demanding something different. It's demanding that you root, that you ground, that you become the tree that others lean on when their own roots aren't strong enough. But here's what most people don't understand about the oak. It looks immovable, but it's constantly growing. Those roots go deeper every year. That trunk gets wider. Those branches extend. The oak isn't static. It's not stubborn. It's strategically slow. It doesn't waste energy on rapid growth that won't last. It builds, gradually, patiently, permanently. And that's your 2026 teaching. Stop chasing quick fixes. Stop looking for shortcuts. Stop trying to transform overnight. Real power is built slowly. Real strength comes from consistent, patient, daily root deepening. Your specific path in 2026, your self-actualization journey. It's about embodiment, about finally inhabiting your body, your life, your power. Because right now, even though you chose the oak, you're not living like an oak. You're living like a sapling, still waiting for permission to be big, still afraid that if you grow too tall, someone will cut you down, still playing small because at some point in your past, your bigness was punished. Your strength was criticized. Your power was called arrogance. So you learned to shrink, and that learning has kept you safe. But it's also kept you small. And 2026 is the year that ends. Here's what's going to happen practically. You're going to face situations that demand you take a stand. That demand you set boundaries. That demand you say no when you've always said yes. That demand you lead when you've always followed. And every fiber of your being is going to want to retreat, to accommodate, to shrink back into the comfortable smallness you perfected. But you can't, because you chose the oak. And the oak doesn't retreat. It stands. Even when the storm comes. Especially when the storm comes. The shadow side of the oak, the thing you need to watch for, is rigidity. The oak that becomes too solid, too unmovable, it becomes brittle. It stops adapting. It stops growing. It mistakes stubbornness for strength. And when a big enough storm comes, it breaks, because it forgot how to bend. So your challenge in 2026 isn't just to root and stand. It's to root deeply enough that you can also sway. To be strong enough that you can afford to be flexible. To be grounded enough that you don't need to prove your power by being immovable. Jung would say you're integrating the king or queen archetype, the sovereign, the one who rules their own kingdom. And that kingdom is your life, your choices, your boundaries, your energy. For too long, you've let others govern you, tell you what to do, how to feel, what to want. You've been living in democracy when your soul is calling for monarchy, not tyranny, but sovereignty, self-rule, the ability to make decisions from your center and trust them, to know what's right for you and not need external validation. That's self-actualization for the oak. That's what 2026 is offering you. Practically, here's your blueprint. First, you need to identify where you're still making yourself small. Where are you still seeking permission? Where are you still dimming your light? Where are you still apologizing for existing? Write it down. All of it. Because you can't change what you can't see. Second, you need to practice standing. Literally and metaphorically. Stand with your feet planted. Feel your connection to the earth. Practice saying no without explanation. Practice taking up space without apologizing. Practice being big even when it makes people uncomfortable. Third, and this is crucial, you need to build your root system, your support structures. The oak's strength isn't just in its trunk, it's in its roots. You need practices that ground you, meditation, nature, physical exercise, anything that gets you out of your head and into your body. You need relationships that support your bigness instead of requiring your smallness. You need to cut out people and situations that demand you shrink, because you can't grow into an oak while surrounded by people with chainsaws. Fourth, you need to learn the difference between power and force. Force is aggressive. Power is calm. Force needs to prove itself. Power simply is. Your 2026 journey isn't about becoming louder or more aggressive. It's about becoming more present, more embodied, more rooted in your truth. When you speak from that place, people listen. Not because you're forcing them to, but because there's a weight to your words, a gravity. That's the oak's power. Your relationships in 2026 are going to shift dramatically. Some people are going to love your new rootedness. They're going to feel safe around your stability. They're going to lean on your strength. Let them. That's part of your path. But some people are going to resist. They're going to try to uproot you. They're going to call you stubborn, rigid, unwilling to compromise. They're going to miss the version of you that bent to their will. Let them go, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty that you're done being a tree that can be moved by anyone's wind. The oak's gift to the world is stability, dependability, strength. In a world that's constantly changing, constantly unstable, constantly uncertain, you become the thing people can count on, the person who doesn't waver, who doesn't change with the trends, who stands for something real. And 2026 needs that. Your family needs that. Your community needs that. You need that. But remember, the oak didn't become mighty overnight. It started as an acorn, small, vulnerable, buried in darkness, and it had to trust the process. Had to stay in the dark soil long enough to develop roots before it could reach for the light. That's your 2026 metaphor. You might need to go through a period of darkness first. A period where you're developing roots that nobody can see, where it looks like nothing is happening. But everything is happening, underground, in the invisible. And when you finally break through the surface, when you finally stand in your full oak power, it'll be because you trusted the darkness. You trusted the slow growth. You trusted the process of becoming rooted. Your 2026 mantra, I am grounded. I am strong. I am unmovable by anything that is not my truth. Say it every morning. Feel it in your body. Let it become more than words. Let it become your reality. Because that's your path. Oak. That's your self-actualization. Stop waiting for permission. Stop making yourself small. 2026 is the year you root. The year you stand. The year you finally become the mighty oak you were always meant to be. The Weeping Willow, the path of flowing grace. If you chose the Weeping Willow, your 2026 path is the flowing healer, the emotional alchemist, the one who must learn that strength isn't rigidity, it's flexibility. That power isn't hardness, it's resilience. That healing isn't fixing, it's feeling. And you, Willow, you've been afraid of your own softness. You've been told that sensitivity is weakness, that emotions are inconvenient, that grace is passive. But 2026 is about to teach you that the willow survives storms that break the oak, because the willow knows how to bend. Here's what your unconscious is revealing by choosing the willow. You're ready to stop fighting your nature. You're ready to stop trying to be tough, strong, impenetrable. You're ready to embrace what you've been taught to hate about yourself, your sensitivity, your emotional depth, your ability to feel everything. Because that's not a flaw. That's your superpower. The willow's branches touch the water. They flow with the current. They bend with the wind. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's survival. That's grace under pressure. The weeping willow represents what Jung called the integration of the feminine principle. Not feminine as in gender. Feminine as in receptive, as in flowing, as in allowing, as in feeling. Our culture worships the masculine principle. Action, doing, controlling, achieving. And you, Willow, you probably tried to live that way. You've tried to be productive, efficient, tough, unemotional, and it's been killing you because that's not your nature. Your nature is water, and water doesn't push. It flows. It doesn't force. It allows. It doesn't break through obstacles. It moves around them. That's your 2026 teaching. Your specific path to self-actualization this year is about emotional mastery, not emotional control. Mastery. The difference is crucial. Control means suppressing. Mastery means understanding. Control means shutting down. Mastering means flowing through. You've spent years trying to control your emotions, trying to stop feeling so much, trying to be rational, logical, unaffected. And every time you've done that, you've cut yourself off from your greatest gift, your empathy, your intuition, your ability to read energy, your capacity to heal through presence. Here's what's going to happen in 2026. You're going to be forced to feel things you've been avoiding. Old grief, buried anger, unexpressed sadness. The willow's roots are in water, and you've been standing on dry land for too long, afraid that if you let yourself feel, you'll drown. But you won't drown. You'll finally flow. You'll finally release what's been stuck. And in that release, you'll discover resilience you didn't know you had. Because the willow that touches the water isn't weak. It's replenished. It's renewed. It's connected to the source. The shadow side of the willow is over-adaptation. The willow that bends too much, that has no core, that flows with every current. It loses itself. It becomes whatever others need it to be. It shape-shifts so much it forgets its own shape. And you've done this. You've made yourself fluid for others while becoming rigid with yourself. You've been so flexible in relationships that you've lost your boundaries. So accommodating to others' needs that you've forgotten your own. So good at flowing around obstacles that you've never learned to face them directly. Jung would say you're stuck in the caregiver archetype without accessing its shadow. You give and give and give, but you never receive. You hold space for everyone else's emotions, but you don't express your own. You heal others while ignoring your own wounds. And 2026 is calling you to integrate the opposite, to learn that flowing includes flowing toward yourself. That grace includes grace for your own needs. That healing begins with healing yourself. Your practical blueprint for 2026 starts with permission. Permission to feel. Permission to cry. Permission to be affected by things. Permission to be sensitive without apologizing for it. You need to stop treating your emotional nature like it's a problem to be solved. It's not. It's a gift to be honored. Create space every day for emotional processing. Journaling, crying, dancing, whatever lets the energy move through you instead of staying stuck. Second, you need to learn discernment. The willow must know when to bend and when to stand straight. You need to develop the ability to feel everything without absorbing everything, to be empathetic without being codependent, to hold space without taking responsibility, to care without sacrificing. This is your biggest challenge, Willow. Learning that you can be soft and still have boundaries, that you can be flowing and still have structure, that you can be open and still be protected. Third, you need water. Literally. The willow needs to be near water to survive. You need to be near whatever replenishes you. For some, it's actual water, baths, swimming, rain. For others, it's creative flow, music, art, writing. For others, it's emotional connection, deep conversations, intimacy. Whatever fills your well, you need more of it in 2026 because you've been pouring from empty for too long. Fourth, you need to embrace your cyclical nature. The willow looks like it's always weeping, but that's just how it grows. Those drooping branches are reaching for water. They're not sad. They're seeking nourishment. You need to stop interpreting your emotional cycles as weakness. Sometimes you need to retreat. Sometimes you need to feel heavy. Sometimes you need to weep. That's not depression. That's the willow touching the water. That's the soul replenishing itself. Your relationships in 2026 are going to transform. You're going to stop being everyone's emotional container. You're going to stop over-functioning in relationships where others underfunction. You're going to stop making yourself small so others can feel big. And some people aren't going to like this. They're going to call you selfish. They're going to accuse you of not caring anymore. But what's really happening is you're finally caring about yourself as much as you care about them. You're finally flowing in both directions, giving and receiving. That's not selfish. That's balanced. The willow's gift to the world is emotional intelligence, healing presence, the ability to create safety. You make people feel seen, heard, held, not through advice or fixing, but through simple presence, through the willingness to sit with someone in their pain without trying to make it go away. That's rare. That's powerful. That's sacred. And 2026 needs that gift more than ever. But you need to give it from overflow, not from depletion. You need to be so filled with your own emotional well-being that your care for others is a natural overflow, not a desperate attempt to feel worthy. The willow that's connected to water can afford to let its branches droop. The willow that's disconnected from water withers. Stay connected to your source, willow. Stay connected to what replenishes you. Here's what self-actualization looks like for you in 2026. It's not about becoming less sensitive. It's about becoming sensitively strong. It's not about feeling less. It's about feeling fully without being consumed. It's not about stopping your flow. It's about directing your flow toward your own roots first. The willow that takes care of itself first can offer shade to others. The willow that depletes itself to care for others eventually dies. Don't die for others' comfort. Flow for your own life. Your 2026 mantra: I bend, but I don't break. I feel, but I'm not consumed. I flow, but I'm not lost. Say it when you're tempted to overgive. Say it when you're apologizing for your sensitivity. Say it when you're making yourself small to make others comfortable. You're the willow, and the willow knows something the rigid trees don't. Flexibility is strength. Grace is power. Flowing is surviving. That's your path. That's your truth. That's your 2026. The lone pine, the path of ascending solitude. If you chose the lone pine, your 2026 path is the ascending seeker, the solitary visionary, the one who must learn that isolation isn't loneliness, it's incubation. That separation is a rejection, it's initiation. That standing alone isn't abandonment, it's elevation. And you, pine, you've been afraid of your own differentness. You've tried to fit in, tried to belong, tried to be part of the forest. But you're not meant for forest. You're meant for the mountain. And 2026 is the year you climb. Here's what your unconscious is telling you by choosing the pine. You're done pretending to be like everyone else. You're done forcing yourself into communities that don't understand you. You're done compromising your vision to fit into someone else's reality. The lone pine doesn't grow in the valley where it's comfortable. It grows on the mountain where it's cold, harsh, and lonely, because it's called to higher ground. And so are you, not because you're better, but because your path is different. Your destiny is vertical. Your growth is ascension. The lone pine represents what Jung called the individuation process in its most extreme form. It's the hero's journey, the call to adventure, the willingness to leave the known world and venture into the unknown, alone. And this terrifies most people, because we're tribal creatures. We want to belong. We need connection. We fear exile. But you chose the pine, which means your soul is ready for something that can't happen in the safety of the group, something that requires solitude, silence, separation, the kind of transformation that only happens when you're alone with yourself and with the divine. Your specific path in 2026 is about sovereignty, absolute self-authority, not arrogance, not isolation for its own sake, but the deep, unshakable knowing that your truth is yours alone, that your path is unique, that your purpose can't be found by following anyone else's map. The pine doesn't look to the oak for guidance. It doesn't compare itself to the willow. It climbs, higher and higher, into thinner air, into harsher conditions, into territory where most trees can't survive. And it does it alone. That's your calling. Here's what's going to happen practically. You're going to lose people in 2026, not because you push them away, but because your path diverges from theirs. You're going to outgrow friendships that were comfortable but not aligned. You're going to question beliefs you've held your entire life. You're going to pull away from communities that once felt like home. And it's going to hurt. It's going to feel like failure, like something's wrong with you. But nothing's wrong. You're just ascending. And not everyone can or wants to climb. The shadow side of the pine is spiritual bypassing. The pine that climbs so high it loses connection to earth, that becomes so focused on ascension that it forgets embodiment, that uses spirituality as an excuse to avoid intimacy, that mistakes isolation for enlightenment. And you need to watch for this, because your natural tendency is to go up and in, to retreat, to withdraw, to seek solitude not as a practice but as a permanent state. But true individuation requires integration. You must climb the mountain and then come back down. You must find yourself in solitude and then bring that self back to relationship. Jung would say you're in the process of integrating the sage or hermit archetype, the one who leaves society to find truth and then returns to share it. But most people only do the first part. They leave, they seek, they climb, but they never come back. They stay on the mountain, believing they're enlightened, when really they're just avoiding. Your challenge in 2026 is to complete the full cycle. Separate, transform, return, contribute. The lone pine stands alone, but it also provides shelter for animals, shade for travelers, seeds for new forests. It's alone but not useless, solitary but not selfish. Your practical blueprint starts with permission to be different, permission to want things others don't want, to value things others don't value, to walk paths others don't understand. You need to stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your choices. Stop trying to make your journey make sense to people who aren't on it. The pine doesn't apologize for growing on the mountain. It just grows. That's your 2026 energy. Second, you need a practice of solitude, not accidental aloneness. Intentional solitude. Daily time alone with no distractions. No phone. No music. No input. Just you and silence. This is where you'll find your answers. This is where your truth speaks. This is where the path reveals itself. The lone pine grows in harsh conditions because harsh conditions force it to develop strength. Solitude is your harsh condition. It's where you build the internal structure that allows you to stand alone. Third, you need a vision, a mountain to climb, a purpose that's bigger than comfort, bigger than approval, bigger than fitting in. What is it? What's the thing you know you're meant to do but you've been too afraid to pursue because it sets you apart? That's your mountain. 2026 is the year you start climbing. Not next year. Not when conditions are perfect. Now, from here, even if you're starting at sea level, even if the peak is invisible, start. Fourth, you need to learn the difference between being alone and being lonely. The pine is alone but not lonely. It's complete in itself. It doesn't need other trees to validate its existence, but it's also connected to the earth, to the sky, to the ecosystem, to the divine. You need to develop that same completeness, that same self-sufficiency that isn't actually separate from everything else. You need to find the paradox of being whole in yourself while still being part of the whole. Your relationships in 2026 will be few but deep. You're going to stop collecting surface connections. You're going to release relationships based on convenience, history, or obligation. And you're going to cultivate connections with other seekers, other climbers, other people who understand that the path up the mountain is lonely but necessary. These relationships will be rare, but they'll be real. And they'll sustain you in ways that 100 shallow friendships never could. The pine's gift to the world is vision, perspective, the ability to see what others can't see from the valley. When you climb, you gain elevation. You see patterns, connections, truths that aren't visible from ground level. And the world needs your vision, needs your perspective, needs what you discover on the mountain. But you have to climb first. You have to separate first. You have to find it first. Then you can share it. But here's the warning. Don't get addicted to the mountain. Don't use your spiritual path as an excuse to avoid being human. Don't use your uniqueness as a reason to be superior. The lone pine stands apart, but it's still part of the forest ecosystem. It's different but not separate. It's alone but not isolated. That's the balance you must find. That's the integration you must embody. Here's what self-actualization looks like for you in 2026. It's about becoming so complete in yourself that you don't need external validation, but you still choose connection. It's about climbing so high that you see truth clearly, and then bringing that truth back to earth. It's about standing alone without being lonely, being different without being defensive, being solitary without being separate. The lone pine is mighty not because it's alone, but because it learned to stand alone. That's your power. That's your path. Your 2026 mantra. I stand alone, but I'm not lonely. I climb high, but I stay grounded. I am different, and that is my gift. Say it when you're tempted to shrink back into the crowd. Say it when you're afraid of being seen as weird. Say it when you feel the pull to return to what's comfortable instead of what's true. You're the lone pine, and the lone pine knows something the forest trees don't. True strength comes from standing in your truth, even when you're the only one standing there. That's your journey. That's your destiny. That's your 2026. So now you know which tree you are. You know the archetypal pattern in your soul is ready to activate. You know the specific path to self-actualization that 2026 is offering you. But here's the final truth that ties it all together. You're not just one tree. You contain all three. The oak's power, the willow's grace, the pine's vision. The tree you chose shows you which lesson is primary for your 2026 journey. But the goal isn't to become only that tree. The goal is to integrate all three. True self-actualization isn't about being the best oak or willow or pine. It's about becoming the whole forest. It's about knowing when to root like the oak, when to flow like the willow, when to climb like the pine. It's about having access to all the archetypal energies and knowing which one to activate in each moment. That's mastery. That's wholeness. That's what Jung meant by the self with a capital S. The oak must learn from the willow how to bend. The willow must learn from the pine how to stand alone. The pine must learn from the oak how to root. They need each other. And you need all three aspects of yourself. 2026 is just highlighting which one needs the most attention right now, which one needs to be developed, which one needs to be healed, which one needs to emerge. So here's your final assignment, your integration practice for 2026. Every month, check in with yourself. Am I being too rigid like an unevolved oak? Do I need to flow more like the willow? Am I overgiving like an unbalanced willow? Do I need to set boundaries like the oak? Am I isolating like an escape pine? Do I need to come back to community? Use these three trees as a diagnostic tool, as a map, as a mirror. And remember, self-actualization isn't a destination. It's not something you achieve, and then you're done. It's a process, a journey, a constant becoming. The oak is always growing deeper roots. The willow is always reaching for water. The pine is always climbing higher. They never stop. Neither should you. 2026 isn't the year you become perfect. It's the year you become more real, more whole, more yourself. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you should be, not who others want you to be. Who you truly are, and your tree, the one you chose today, it's showing you the path back to that truth, back to yourself, back to wholeness. Walk it, trust it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because on the other side of this journey is a version of you that's so aligned, so authentic, so actualized that your entire life will reflect it. 2026 is waiting. Your path is clear. Your tree has spoken. Now it's time to grow. Comment below which tree you chose and what it revealed. Share this with someone who needs to find their path. Subscribe for more depth psychology that actually transforms you. And remember, you're not just choosing a tree. You're choosing yourself. You're choosing growth. You're choosing the courage to become who you were always meant to be. Welcome to 2026. Welcome to your self-actualization. Welcome home to yourself. Let's grow.